manifestation, and I would not be similar to Councilor De La Llana, who would be leaking secrets, but I appreciate his contention, his arguments, no. And I would agree with the good lady. This measure is a very good measure, and this is not the first measure to introduce the Freedom of Information Ordinance. For my colleagues from the 11th Council, if you could recall, it was former Councilor Dr. Candice Tupas who introduced an initial version of this Freedom of Information Ordinance. It was well supported by the members of the City Council. However, during deliberation, it was considered difficult to implement such Freedom of Information Ordinance. We are all aware that it is already enshrined in the Constitution, and it could be deduced that the Anti-Red Tape Anti-Red Tape Act, or the ARTA, also gives effectivity to the freedom of information. However, we have to also consider the existing national law, which is the Data Privacy Act. Data Privacy Act. So there are several information and data that are protected, that are being held and collected by the city government, which is in line with the manifestations of Councilor De La Llana. Not all information should be publicized, should be available to the public. That is why one of the reasons why the 11th Council was derailed in pursuing the FOI, because we did not have the mechanisms available. We don't have the executive department functions and offices available to handle such information, which is precisely, as the chairman of the Blue Ribbon Committee, I created, through the assistance of my colleagues from the City Council, created the DASMO in view of the freedom of information accessibility of the Ilonggo people. So this is nothing new. This is not a new measure. However, during the 11th Council, it was just difficult to implement. Now, considering that we have already the existing DASMO and we are gearing towards the implementation of the FOI as enshrined by the Constitution, I believe Councilor Nene De La Llana already has a draft for this Freedom of Information Ordinance. We were able to discuss this as early as June, even before we assumed our offices as newly elected councilors. We already discussed this FOI, and I think he is supposed to schedule this introduction, supposed to be last week or this week. I don't know if the good proponent is willing to collaborate with Councilor De La Llana with his alternative version. However, we have to tread very carefully when we are dealing with freedom of information. Otherwise, we risk not only to violate the national law, but also the private rights, the privacy of each individual that we handle here in the city of Iloilo. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, good proponent. Thank you.
Madam Chair, thank you very much, insight of our floor leader and the information that he gave. Actually, again, I would have a corollary motion with this privilege, and it would the said mechanism, because subong may ara kita information and hindi kita wala pa sang nagga-guide kung ano ang hindi. Sorry again. And so again, the ordinance nga gusto ko tani ipasulod would give the mechanism for the freedom of information. So if I'm allowed, I would just like to make a corollary motion. I would like to move to pass for first reading an ordinance operationalizing the people's right.
Is this the same item?
Yes, the same item as FO1, Madam Chair.
Okay, please proceed.
So it's an ordinance operationalizing the people's right to access information and establishing a mechanism for the disclosure of public records in Iloilo City and for the violations thereof. So moved.
It has been moved and duly seconded. Hearing no objections, motion is carried.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
For the ordinance just passed on first reading, I would like to respectfully move that this ordinance be referred to the Committee on Public Information and the Committee on Information and Technology wherein the Committee on Public Information shall act as the lead committee. So moved.
So it has been moved and duly seconded. Hearing no objections, motion is carried.
With that, would like to lift from the table item E1, this privileged speech of Councilor Romel Duron, entitled "The Rule of Law, Not Men." With that, would like to request that Councilor Romel Duron be recognized.